One thing people tend to forget is that I need to be fair in my own criticism when it comes to them and not show any bias. So at the very least, right, they put this word here. And I know the reason why they put this word here. Because if they didn't put this word, they knew that there would be a lot of backlash coming from me and other bus enthusiasts alike. So the big question is, why couldn't you guys have done this to 851 instead of trying to convert the parent service to skip stops? Like the thing is, this is an article, so if you write it like this, let's say you do the same thing but for 851, you change the current 851E to 851F or whatever, nobody would say anything negative about it because it's just changing a variant without touching the parent service. And because of the backlash, right, they don't dare to put that many rapid sectors into like the entire route. I don't know what this one is. I don't even know if this one is meant to be like a replacement for 107 or anything, because I feel that this thing kind of looks a little suspicious, right? So all I can say is the downside of introducing such a service at the expense of losing 107 is that you would have to answer to people who lost their late night bus connectivity to Kovan area or even Hougang, like those who take 107M late at night nowadays. So if you want to introduce this kind of service, you would need something else to cover Kovan or Hougang that goes to Suntec. Because Service 80, it stops at like City Hall. It doesn't even go into Suntec City. So this is one gap that you have to resolve if this service is meant to be like 107's replacement or anything. Then you will need to solve that gap. So this paragraph is basically just saying how he sees like they saw some kind of route in London that they liked, and then they wanted to implement more bus services in Singapore that have the stopping pattern of current service 30E, in other words. I am aware of the existence of this. They use something historical, but obviously it's historical. Once the MRT came up, these were never a thing again, and the only thing that Singapore has now is 30E pretty much. And then they talked about this thing, which is just basically describing history. So this part is basically just saying 660 and M is okay. It's just that since they don't go to Fernvale and therefore their proposed service would serve Fernvale instead, so there's nothing wrong with this. But this one, it's not entirely accurate because you have to remember that 678, they started off with SDs and then really quickly they got upgraded into double-deckers. It was first like only one bus got upgraded and then now both buses got upgraded for AM and PM. Even for PM peak, there is actually sizable demand, and obviously AM peak, the demand is a lot higher. Don't believe me, you just go and observe 678. So I don't even know why they put here limited success when those people don't even bother to observe 678 in the first place. But again, minor issue. And then the thing over here, like this part, so this is basically saying that, or trying to say that like people don't take city direct services because they rather take MRT to the main hub, like the central hub, and then transfer to the feeder services. But this one really depends on context. And the thing is, I do not deny that in some cases it's really like that. But to claim that city direct services are not effective because of like whatever reason you mentioned, and then you use this reason to say that, oh, people prefer the MRT. And it's not 100% wrong, but if you ever see City Direct services or the City Shopper style City Direct bus services from Orchard, if you see them having like lower demand as compared to like previous years, it's all because of the fare increase, and it has got nothing to do with like whatever is stated here. Again, I'm not saying whatever is stated here is completely false. I'm just saying that they really miss an opportunity to talk about the fare increase, the 50 cents increase for express bus services. And maybe they should have talked about like the, what you call that again? That scheme whereby you get a bonus for using the Northeast City Direct bus services, or if you tap in before a certain time. That scheme, I forgot the name of it. Maybe they could have explained that one as well. But all in all, right, nobody here is trying to reinforce the hub and spoke model that encourages transfers. If anything, right, it's quite poorly phrased in the sense that if whatever you said in this, like the part that's highlighted in blue, if whatever this thing says is true, the commuters made the decision, and it's not like the authorities made the decision. If the authorities wanted a like full-on hub spoke model, they wouldn't even have introduced the City Direct services in the first place. So saying that like, oh, it reinforces, it's not entirely true. Unless you're trying to say that this behavior alone reinforces the model based on like travel patterns, blah blah blah, then okay, I give it to you. And at least they said highly encouraged and not like a must or anything. But again, you need to take into account like infrastructural constraints and stuff like that. But then like, I've talked about this before. Leftmost lanes of roads, it's still fine. But leftmost lanes of like expressways and flyovers, I already talked about how this looks good on paper, but just absolutely doesn't work in practice. Like after so long, they finally clarified with their viewers on how they are going to do this, but when I read this thing, I just call it bullshit. Like anybody who has driven or ridden a vehicle in Singapore would tell you that this just doesn't work. The problem with this is that yes, you could do it to normal roads, but it's a flyover, it's an expressway for a reason, and they were never meant to use traffic lights. So it's just so illogical to put a traffic light on a road that is meant to be non-stop, like a flyover or an expressway. It just defeats the purpose of having an expressway or a flyover in the first place. And you, at that point, you might as well just call it Punggol North Avenue. Like you might as well just call it a semi-express road. So even though I disagree with this, they could have phrased it better to say that like we should convert expressways or flyovers to semi-express roads instead. And even though I disagree with the way that they're doing things, at the very least it's a lot clearer. At the very least, it shows understanding that a semi-express road, it's meant to be different from an actual flyover, underpass, or an expressway where it's not meant to have any traffic junctions or even signalized junctions at all. If anything, this is probably just poor phrasing and not leveraging enough on Punggol North Avenue kind of roads to prove their point. Like if they said we should turn the expressways to Punggol North Avenue like roads, even though I disagree, but at least the point they want to make is clearer. Because the thing is, other than the flowery language used at the end to clickbait people, nobody is really against using buses to fortify gaps or anything. It just depends on the way you do it. Because if you do it in this style and you make sure that people taking 107M, for instance, to Kovan and Hougang have adequate compensation, then okay, fine, I can accept it. But if they had said, I am going to convert the parent service 43 to 43F, or I am going to convert the parent service 851 to 851F, then obviously that's just stupid. So at the very least, they didn't make the mistake that they made last time. And if 701 uh, is actually meant to be 107's replacement, like in the case that it actually is, isn't it ironic that they claim that they hate hub spoke a lot, but they want to impose hub spoke, meaning you transfer from like this service to another bus service to go to Kovan and Haokang, then it really doesn't match up with what you're trying to achieve, right? It's like you want to cut away hub spoke, but you make existing commuters hub spoke because now they have to transfer now that they don't have 107 in the first place. Like it just doesn't make sense if on a macro scale, like a network point of view, you introduce less hub spoke, but then you introduce more hub spoke. So I mean, you cut away hub spoke, but then you go on to introduce more hub spoke. Especially if you say something like, I'm gonna convert the parent service 851 into 851F. This kind of thing will just introduce way more hub spoke, which just goes against like their own narrative in the first place. They haven't mentioned about 851 or anything, I'm just saying. But if they ever do drop an article on 851 with such similar proposals, that'll really tell if they have really learned from their mistakes or not. So I will just summarize. If they change 851E to 851F, nobody's going to have a problem with their proposal. If they withdraw 851E and change the parent service 851 to 851F, that one is a problem, which I have been talking about for many months already. I only say this because I have seen their nonsense before, but whether they choose to learn from it, only time will tell. Because pretty much everything that is being said in this article, you can go read it yourself, but it's, again, why do you have to keep mentioning Jeff Xiao, your idol? But again, everything that has been said, like at the front part of this article, the front part is pretty much just like context, and it's just using this thing to pretty much leverage. Also, to be honest, if you're talking about Singapore, right, please don't, at least try not to bring in examples from other countries. Just focus on Singapore alone. But I do have to say, this one isn't necessarily a good example because you see, right, Service 17 is the only bus along Bedok North Avenue 4. And the way this route was being crayoned in the first place, it's meant to wind, which again contradicts their previous articles saying that, oh, we want our inner town services to wind, and 17 we classify it as like an inner town. It's like, so do you want it to wind or not? Because the way this group plans is that they want their sonic buses to go straight, and then they want their inner town services to wind. So are they actually complaining about their inner town services winding in the first place? Which just doesn't add up. But anyway, I think it's just like a bad example, if anything. And the thing is, if you want to talk about 805 or 812, literally your alternative is 861 to Khatib. Not even Yishun, like just Khatib. Even 812 serves Khatib as well. Even 117, even though that's not like the most convenient option, it also serves Khatib. But did they forget to mention about 861? I know you're just using examples, but when there is like another thing that can disprove your point, even if it disproves your point, right, you can add it in so that it adds a little bit more nuances so that your audience knows what exactly you're talking about and the limitations of what you're trying to suggest. So they should have added 861 in, because 861 takes them to Khatib MRT as well. It doesn't take them to Yishun. I don't know how they calculated, but yeah. And then some more examples. I'm not gonna read this. Decentralization of like Changi Business Park, blah blah blah. There is a reason why LTA is not keen to reintroduce the traffic prioritized system for buses. But again, talking about it is, there's nothing wrong with it, but I just want you guys to realize that this is something that's not realistic in Singapore at all. But talking about it alone is fine. The thing is that you guys know that this group is really, really, really anti-cars. They are trying to force people to not use cars, and they want to force them to use public transit. The thing is that, like, I'm all for improving the bus and train network for people who want to use public transport. And if people want to switch over, then okay, it's fine as well. But I am not in favor of outright forcing people to switch over by intentionally making driving a living hell for other road users other than buses. Because this seems like, oh, I just want my buses to go faster. Screw every other vehicle. I mean, this kind of like screw every other vehicle thing I've already talked about in like other videos. But again, you should never force people. Like, if they're comfortable with owning a car and then they've explained their reasons, you don't have the right to force them. I would rather you improve the bus and train network and let people make their choice. Like, you don't take away the freedom of choice from people, and at the same time, more people might be inclined to, you know, go along with your narrative of ditching their car and in favor of like taking the bus and train. I would rather you guys do it in this way rather than, oh, I'm going to make driving super difficult for everyone and I want to force everybody on board the bus or train, that kind of thing. But in any case, I think this paragraph is way too yappy. It's not really proving anything. So conclusion is that whatever they said on top, like the circle line disruption thingy, it's basically used to tie into this thing. And the thing is, right, you guys already know their dirty trick. They want to use all of these like disruptions to leverage on why they need the skip stop buses. But if their skip stop buses are just variants of parent services or completely new services, nobody's going to question them. The issue is when you convert existing services to skip stop. But the most important thing is that outside of an MRT disruption, you have to ensure that whatever route you create, like these variants, or even in the case of like this 701, I don't know what it is, but these route variants, right, you have to ensure that outside of MRT disruptions, they would be useful. Otherwise, there is really no point in introducing them. Like, they would just carry error. But at the very least, they still haven't dared to say anything about 851. Because I know if they said it, it's gonna get a lot of backlash. And as I've said before, if they are just trying to convert 851E to 851F, that one's okay. Nobody's gonna say anything about that because it's just converting an existing variant. It's not converting the existing parent service to skip stops.